All right. Yo, my name's Clay. I'm one of the founders of Sobriety Hub software. I'm here today with my good friend Eric Parra of PluggedIn Recovery. What's up, Eric? How you doing today?
What's up, Clay? Happy to be here, man.
Sweet. Yeah, it's great to have you on. So Eric operates Plugged In Recovery along with Wade Bolhauser in Arizona. They've got, is it the biggest program in Arizona or one of the largest?
We're top three. We're top three. Just hit three. We're at 14 houses.
14 houses. Okay. And how many beds is that?
It will be, I believe, 151 total beds.
151 total beds. Okay. So you're overseeing a lot of people in early recovery. Tell us about how you got into that role and kind of what your day-to-day looks like.
Yeah, man. I mean, a little bit about how I got into the role. I've known Wade. I came into recovery back in 2020. I was living out in Colorado. I came out to Arizona for treatment and stayed. I did outpatient program through the treatment center that I was at, and that was my first experience with sober living. Is I was living in a sober living house, going to IOP, PHP, and I stayed in a sober living house for 10 months, to kind of give me a foundation. And I don't want to say that my experience was bad, because it definitely wasn't. The camaraderie and everything else that I found was amazing. But I do think that at that time, back in 2020, 2021, I didn't know, or I didn't even think to know that there could be a higher level of like what sober living could be. And so, fast forward, right? I have a relationship with Wade, just a friendship. And back in 2022, he decided that he wanted to open up a sober living house and get into the space. And that's what he did. And so he quit his corporate job, and got into the sober living space. And yeah, I kind of hopped on board when he had three houses. I came on board last year around May. So I'm coming up on a year of kind of getting involved with Wade and buying into the vision and seeing what he has to offer. And dude, it was amazing. Within 2 months, I believe it was like late June, early July of last year, I quit my job, and I started working for Wade full time. And since then, we've been able to expand and grow partnerships. And just what I love most about it, and this is what I love most about Sobriety Hub, it's like it's a very young company, and there's room for innovation. There's room for like dreaming things up of like, no, it would be cool, we could do this, and then seeing what it would take to manifest that. And my day-to-day life, it looks just like that, man. We put an emphasis on sober living is a service industry at its core, and I think that a lot of operators lose sight of that. A lot of operators run from a place of authority where it's just like, you're going to do things our way or you're going to be out on the street, right? And it's like we wanted to approach it as like, it is a market, and there's a lot of sober living houses that are available for people to go to. So why do they want to choose ours? Like, what can we offer our residents? Like, what can we do for them to make them want to choose Plugged In, to make them want to join this family and like better their lives? And I think taking that approach was like the biggest like turn on for me and why I wanted to join. And like when Wade sat me down and like shared that with me, it was just like, we want to offer people as much value as we can to help them. I was like fully bought in, dude. So that's what I do, man. I do all of our admissions here. If you call our main line, you're going to talk to me. I handle, day-to-day stuff around the houses, and really just try to build a community, a culture, because it's like we want it to be. It's like when you come to Arizona, if you ever come out here and you go to any of the meeting halls or you're around, you're gonna see Plugged In shirts. It's like we're creating a culture. It's something like that people want to be a part of. So that's what I do, man. That's what I do.
That's awesome. So what kinds of things do you do at Plugged In that you think really differentiate you from the typical kind of mom and pop program?
Yeah, man. I mean, first and foremost, everyone's biggest gripe in sober living is always just like worn down mattresses, right? Like I know Wade tells the story all the time, but when he was in sober living, he had like a spring that would just be in his back, or like the sober living I was at, they didn't let you have TVs in your room, or like there were like little things that like they didn't. It wasn't 100% like I was at home. You know what I mean? So, like, to our core, we believe that when we open up all of our houses, we put brand new furniture in every house. We put brand new memory foam mattresses in each room. There's 55-inch TVs and all the streaming services included in every room. The amenities aspect is just aimed towards making people feel more human, you know what I mean? And making them feel comfortable and like not necessarily like I already burned my life down to the ground. Like I already had to go to treatment for the 12th time. Like I like my family's already mad at me. Like the last thing I want is to like come home and like live in a place where I'm not comfortable. You know what I mean? So it's just like we wanted to shift what we could offer on that aspect. And then program wise, what we also wanted to do was make it more about the service. And what I mean by that is like we are a 12-step based program, right? And we believe that the 12 steps are one of the most tried and proven ways to like give people a foundation and a way of living to like really like get to that next level in their recovery. But there's so many more variables when you're early in recovery that are roadblocks to getting to where you want to go. People, biggest thing, right? Everyone assumes they don't have a job. They just spent the last 40 days in rehab. Of course, they don't have a job, right? So it's just like they want to go look for a job, but maybe they don't have an ID. Maybe they don't have their social security card. Maybe they don't have health insurance, so they don't qualify for EBT or whatever it is. So we put on, weekly workshops with our guys in the house and females in the house where we help them sign up for these programs. We have people that take the time, sit down with them. Can we get you an ID card? Can we get you a copy of your birth certificate so you have two forms of identification so you can go find employment? We do a lot of service work in that aspect because it's more than just going to meetings and working with a sponsor. Residents are required to pay their own rent. They're required to provide their own food and hygiene products, and like those things cost money. And it's like getting people in a position to like get working is like, and then work on their programs. That was a big gap. Not a lot of sober livings are really taking the time to like help people with that. And so it's like we wanted them to be like, you can come into our house, and it's like if you need an ID, we'll help you get one. If you need to sign up for access, if you need to sign up for EBT, whatever that looks like for you, we have the resources and we can quickly help you get on those to put you in the best position to like start working and start regaining your life. So that's like a lot of the service stuff that we do that I really do think a lot of other programs, they don't.
Yeah. And so in terms of like the organizational chart, right? Like you're kind of overseeing double digit houses, and then who's administering these services? Do y'all have a house manager in every house? Is it a resident who's a live-in manager? Is it an employee? Is it a mix? What does kind of the organizational structure look like?
So the organizational structure, obviously you have Wade, he's the owner operator, and then myself, who just handles the day-to-day operations. But other than that, it's very much decentralized. So we believe we have a live-in house manager who's a resident of the house, but also manages the house, that administers drug tests, that ensures that everybody's doing what they need to do at the house. But other than that, that's kind of how it's structured, right? Is we have our boots on the ground, which are our live-in house managers, and then we have an equivalent to me on the female side. Her name is Desiree. She's amazing. She oversees all 4 of our female houses. And then you have myself on the male side that all the house managers answer to. And then obviously Wade would be at the top of that tree.
Gotcha. Okay. And I'm just kind of thinking about a conversation we were having earlier about some things that you've learned, right? And one thing that you mentioned to me that is probably something that wouldn't occur to somebody just starting up is, collecting a photo ID to ensure that people are who they say they are. So now you guys
Yeah.
always collect a picture of a photo ID on the intake or application. Um, Tell us about, is there anything else that you feel like isn't obvious that's like a key to success, or even not just success, but like covering your ass?
Yeah, I think there's a lot, right? I think there's a lot, and it's like once we hit like the 7, 8 house mark, and it was no longer like a little operation, and it was just like no, like we're really gonna grow this thing to like be I don't want to say legitimate, but like just be like a bigger player in the space. A big thing that we had to like realize is a lot of that is just mitigating any sort of risk when it comes to compliance, when it comes to making sure that all of our houses are meeting the standards of not only the Department of Health Services, but ASRA as well, the Arizona Recovering Housing Association, and making sure that we are above board and in compliance in every sense at every single one of our properties, and making sure that our house managers are properly trained as well in the information that they need, so that if at any time somebody could come in to do a surprise inspection, or somebody could come in and just audit the house, we have everything that we need 100% above board. And that's just one thing that I do think is extremely important. If you ask Desiree, if you ask Wade, ask anybody who works with me, I am so by the book when it comes to we need to be like aggressively in compliance with like everything, right? Like we need to take it upon ourselves. Like we can't just say, well, we know this program doesn't do it, so we'll get away with it as well. It's more of like, no, we need to like set the standard and hold that for ourselves. And I think that it's been amazing over the past, like, when did we start working together? October of
I
last
think
year,
so.
Clay. Yeah, and I remember when we first you met Wade at a national recovery housing event out in Michigan. And I remember when he came back, he had kind of mentioned it, but like some time passed by between when he returned and when he brought it up again, like, hey, we should start looking at this. And I remember like one of those first conversations we had, like my whole thing was, look, like we went fully digital with all of our contracts. Why? Because that mitigates the risk of damage to any important information, or like theft of any important information that we're storing on these residents, copies of their IDs, any documents that they're giving us on their intake. We needed to get that digital, and we needed to have it in a way where we could store it and have that accessible to not only our house managers, but our admin staff in case we needed it, right? That's something that, when we started out, we didn't have a centralized place to store it, right? And that's something that you don't think about when you have 1 or 2 houses and you're doing paper contracts and you have a filing cabinet that locks in the manager's room. Like that's great, but eventually it's like you have, when the house is open long enough, you have a bunch of residents that are been discharged, right? Well, you need to keep those records on that resident for 12 months after they discharge and have that available. You need to be able to access that. So it turns into a huge filing mess, and if everything's by paper, big mess. So it's like first and foremost, when we started hitting that point where we were really starting to take off, I spent 3 weeks straight backlogging and scanning all of our paper contracts, organizing it onto a cloud storage format, and then building out an electronic, a digital contract and a digital orientation agreement. So all of our legally binding signed documents were digital and stored where they could be accessed at any time, anywhere, given you have internet access. So like those are things that like you learn while you're growing, that like it's very important to do. And Yeah, man. It's just I could go on and on with like the lessons learned, but I think that's the biggest one for anybody who's trying to like make that next step. I think it's super important to educate yourself very well in the compliance of the local municipalities that you're in. I think it's very important to understand what your state specific Department of Health Services or whatever whoever provides the special licensing, understand that very well and fight your hardest to be in full compliance with that at all times.
Gotcha. So yeah, so I know that in Arizona, there's a little bit of a touchy history there in Arizona with recovery houses. Um, before, you guys got on the scene and started operating, super high quality and compliance housing. With that in mind, like, what would you say are your plans and goals? I know you're involved with ASRA. What are your plans and goals for kind of like the future of recovery housing, not just at Plugged In, but like at the state level, with ASRA? What do you have in mind? What's your vision?
So yeah, so this is my first year. I am on the executive board of ASRA. I got voted in earlier this year. And I think the main driver of why I wanted to get involved was because there was this huge like scandal that got picked up by some national news outlets, and it just kind of slammed all recovery housing into like one, it like generalized all operators into like one section of like fraud, right? And so like some people that were involved in like insurance splitting and all of that kind of stuff, they lumped all of that into sober living, right? And so to the general public, that's what they associate recovery housing with. And the problem that I see is if we allow that stigma to continue on through like the governor's office and like at the state level, which it is currently, there are some bills that are being passed that are very aggressive and kind of categorize and lump recovery housing into behavioral health treatment centers. And the problem with that is if they're held at the same compliance level as like a treatment center, that would inflate the cost of operation and essentially put thousands of people out on the street because these smaller operators wouldn't be able to sustain a business model that was profitable, and they wouldn't be able to keep their houses open, right? So I see all of this happening, and it's like my main thing is like we need to be able to simultaneously get out into the public and let them know like, hey, this is what recovery housing is all about. Like this is the benefit that it adds to the communities, and this is the benefit that it adds to Phoenix, Arizona is one of the top 3 locations for drug and alcohol treatment in the country. It's a destination that people come to across the board. And Florida is another big one as well. So we have people that are traveling from all over the country to this hotspot to seek high quality treatment, and they stay in recovering housing while they go to outpatient services and while they rebuild their lives. So we're trying to get out into the public and just redefine what that looks like, and then simultaneously raise the standard. So ASRA is working every week. As a board, we meet every week. As a association, we meet every month, and it's always about how can we raise the bar. Like this is what DHS is asking for us, but we have an affiliate, NAR, right? The conference that you had went to, and like NAR has a higher standard for recovery housing than like some local municipalities and state governments. So it's like, how do we don't want to just say, hey, we're compliant here. We don't have to do all of this stuff to be here, so we're not going to. It's really about like, how do we align ourselves with the national leaders of like compliance and efficacy for sober livings, and how do we institute that into Arizona so that when you are certified through ASRA, it's almost like, like you're A plus rated with a BBB, right? It's like it means something to get that certification, and when you see that on the wall, you know that that house is held to the highest standard of sober living and recovering housing. So that's like the main goal of why I wanted to hop on board and like really try to make some of those changes.
Yeah, 100%. Um, well, I'm hoping that that's able to occur. I know that that's kind of like little bit of a new thing with like the NAR standards. I understand they've been doing it for a while, but I talked to some operators in Missouri. They don't even know what NAR is. But then other people do, they put it right on their website. Boom, we're NAR accredited. And it looks good and it looks legit. I'm definitely not an expert at all in how the heck, what the best way to hold recovery residences accountable to standards is. It seems like a complicated thing, right?
And it is, and that's why I really do think that, like, for Azra specifically, right? What I love most about it, at the end of the day, it's operators holding operators accountable to a higher level of care, right? Because Azra is an association of sober living operators, right? That came together and they decided we want to have an inspection process that is rigorous, thorough, fair to all residents, passes all zoning requirements. Like, we want to have a standard that is pristine. And not only are we going to do this, it's not coming from a government agency, it's not coming from anywhere but an alliance of operators who all share the same vision, which is raising the quality of care. And that self accountability amongst operators to have that higher level of care is like really cool. It's really cool to see that, because now it's not up to your local state government or federal government. It's really just like boots on the ground people who are like, I'm in the middle of it every day. It's like I see where the hangups are, I see the pain points, and it's like we have a better understanding as far as what needs to occur to like phase out all of that like negative fraudulent behavior and like move forward in a healthy way. So having a platform through an association that is working hand in hand with the state to like set these policies is just it really is amazing.
Okay, so Eric, you identify as a Sobriety Hub software enthusiast,
Number
which
one
is
supporter, I would say. Show me
okay.
someone who rides for Sobriety Hub more than me that isn't on the payroll.
So yeah, so just tell us about your experience. What do you love, and what are your thoughts on Sobriety Hub so far?
Dude, so just a quick backstory, right? Because I think it's really gonna make what I'm about to say make sense. Is my background before leaving the space to come work with Wade full time is my past three employers were all Series A, B, or C funded startups, right? And in the tech space. And so I have a lot of experience with joining a team that's in like extreme growth mode, like extreme scale mode. And it's like I was always on the sales side of things. But specifically, one company that I want to touch on is it was a tech marketplace for like secondhand capital equipment, right? And so they were building a proprietary CRM. And so there were weekly meetings where the sales team, the business development team, we would sit down with the product development team and say, hey, it would be cool if we had a button here that went here. Or like, hey, it would be cool if like the interface looked like this, or like it would make it easier for all the data input if we did this, right? And those meetings were always amazing because it's like you're working as a team to build the software to what you need for your business to like scale it, right? And so when we started working with you, I saw very similar. It's very, very similar where we have a business where we are scaling rapidly. We are quickly growing in the recovery housing space in Arizona. And it's like we found you guys that are also building a software that is aimed to like help companies like ours, right? And so when we first started working together, I saw what you guys had and I saw the potential of it. And it was just an amazing product. And I instantly understood it. Like when I looked at it, the interface, the different colors on the houses, the like where how it was laid out, where you would go from residence to houses to payments to forms. It made sense. It was a familiar interface. And I was excited about it. And I thought this is something that I want to like know more about. And then we start having meetings. Clay, you and I have had a lot of meetings, which I always appreciate, because I come to you and I say, we dreamed up this idea back in October. I said, Clay, how do we get off of Jot form? How do I get off of Jot form with all of our signed documents where I'm just storing it on a master spreadsheet on cloud storage? How do I get away from that? How do we centralize it into Sobriety Hub? And you guys started working on it. And now I am fully using your forms for all of the intakes, all of the contracts, all of orientation agreements. Anytime I need an important document signed by a resident, it's done through Sobriety Hub. And it was from meetings of just saying, we're dreaming things up. We're saying, know what would make this platform better? You know how this would add more value to our organization, like to Plugged In, is if we had this. And then you guys hear that, you're receptive, and you get to work. And within 5 months of working together, you have something that we just rolled out. We opened the house last week, and I'm fully onboarded everybody in that house with the forms function that you guys rolled out earlier this month. And it's like we're continuously working hand in hand. Another thing that I thought was phenomenal is when we first started using Sobriety Hub, you could only each house was an object, and then you could only just assign people to that object, right? But we didn't know where they were in the house, right? So it's like, it was great. I would go to my dashboard, I would say, hey, I got one bed open at house number 1. But I don't know if that's a single man room. I don't know if that's a $200 a week bed or a $225 a week bed, right? And I have to call into the house manager and I have to try to get a hold of them while I got this other person on the phone, right? Major pain point. I told you guys this and I said, hey, why can't we just assign residents to beds? We break the house up, room, and then how many beds are in the room, label it, and then you assign the resident to the bed, not the house. And you guys had that rolled out in 7 days. Within 7 days of having that meeting, we were assigning residents to beds, not houses. And that is a function that added tremendous value. Now, when I'm on the phone and somebody's reaching out and we're in a situation where it's 10 o'clock at night, they're going to sleep on the street that night if they don't find housing, I can just quickly go in there and I say, I have a bed available here. It's a full-size bed. It's X amount a week. I can get you in tonight. And we can quickly place people in the houses and then send them all their intake information before they even show up to the house, right? So not only am I able to quickly place people, but we can get them all the documents that we need signed from them. I can have that available before they even get to their bed assignment at the house. And that's something that when we first started working with you guys, it wasn't there. And then in 6 months of working with you guys, it's completely functional. We're completely moving in the right direction. And I do think that with not only the state of Arizona, but just across the board, the standard is getting raised. NAR is continuously growing and putting in tremendous work to just increase not only the efficacy, but the quality of operators within the space. And a lot of what Sobriety Hub is offering, and what I see happening is it's going to be the way of the future. It's not only going to be, because you got to think there's 3 main things that I see out of Sobriety Hub, which I think are the tremendous value adds. The first and foremost is the organizational side of things. When you go in there and you set up your organization, and you're set up like us, right? I'll just speak from Plugged In's example. Like we went over, we have 2 directors and we have live-in house managers, and that is the organizational structure, right? The house managers manage the house, and then they report to the directors who report to the owner operator, right? And that's how that works. Well, in Sobriety Hub, when you assign people into your organization, you assign them roles, right? So you can limit or increase their access to the platform depending on what their role is, which is extremely valuable. It's extremely valuable because that allows you to mitigate any sort of risk, because you have admin access that has access to things that each house manager doesn't. And then, you have a third tier that oversees everything. So I think from an operational standpoint, it's going to decentralize your whole operation, where now it's not a million phone calls between people. It's simply go into the system, log it, right? And then you're just auditing the data input that's put in there. And I think it's amazing. It takes a lot off of my plate. And it really empowers our house managers to kind of live within the space, right? And to manage their house without so much oversight, right? Because it's like, I can just audit what they're putting in Sobriety Hub. So I think that's one huge value add. Two is compliance, right? No matter where you're at, you have to license your sober living home if you're going to use it as a sober living home. And when you have to license something, you have to be in compliance to some sort of standard. There's a checklist of you need 50 square foot per resident of livable space, or you need a toilet per 5 residents, or you need X amount of this, right? Fire suppression systems, whatever it is, there is a regulatory standard in order to operate as a licensed sober living house, right? And a big part of that across the board that doesn't change is a code of conduct, is a resident contract, all of these agreements that they have to sign, and then an orientation agreement stating that they fully understand the code of conduct, they understand what the requirements of the house are, and that they're willing to adhere to that. Those are things that are pretty standard across the board, and don't really change. And what Sobriety Hub now offers is you can take those documents that are already required. You already have to have a contract with a code of conduct and house requirements and liabilities and all that other stuff. You already have to have that. But now you have it on a single platform that you're not only using to track your beds, you're not only using to track your residents, but you're storing all of that important documentation in one central location. So when I go to a resident's profile, so if someone's parole officer or PO shows up, or a representative from the state, and they said, hey, we want to look into this resident's agreement, we want to look into their orientation agreement, we want to see their contract, we can just go to their resident profile and it's all right there, viewable, right? And that is phenomenal. So now you don't have to have a house manager with a locked filing cabinet where they're funneling through stuff and maybe it wasn't filled out correctly. All of that is mitigated. That risk is completely eliminated because you're doing everything digitally, and it's impossible to submit the form incomplete, right? So in order for them to submit the form, it has to be completed. So you automatically are mitigating that legal risk of not having your documents signed and stored correctly. The compliance aspect is phenomenal. And then third is the data tracking. Anybody, and no matter what level you are, if you have one house or if you have 20 houses, you want the data. You want to see, how are we succeeding? Where are we falling short? How long are people staying in our program? How many people are leaving our program successfully sober and moving into living situations that are better, right? When you use Sobriety Hub correctly, the outcomes tab will show you a complete dashboard of an entire organization. If I want to go in right now and say, okay, all 151 beds that we have, and I want to look at how many are male, how many are female, what age group are they in, how many are on medication, how many are not on medication. I have all of that information there, so we can pull reports as a leadership team every month, and we can take a look. Look, our average stay went up. Our average stay has gone up 12 days per resident since we started tracking the data in December, which is a pretty big leap when you think about the sober living. It's a fast-paced environment, so to speak, right? So you have people who sometimes they stay for a week. You have some people that stay for 10 months like I did and then move out and then move on with their lives. But it's when you have that information, you have that data, it's extremely valuable to gauge how you're doing, where you're falling short, and how you can improve on in an organization. And it's so not only is this a CRM, so to speak, to track resident information. And another thing that I just thought about, it's not even just about what bed they're in. You're tracking infractions, you're tracking UAs, everything that has to do within the house. House meeting every week, you go in there and you log a house event, right? And you say, hey, this person was at the meeting, this person wasn't. It logs it on the house's timeline and then tags it to the individual's resident profile. So it's just an extremely powerful tool that you can keep track of everything, right? And you can do it from your phone or your laptop. And when I tell you this, the onboarding process for a manager is just simply teaching them how to use Sobriety Hub correctly. And I emphasize, I say, look, this isn't just a tool to track who's currently in the house. It's like the amount of clean data that we can extract from doing this correctly is what's going to be the most valuable for us. And it's going to tell us exactly how we can continuously improve. And this platform is providing all of that, right? And it's like, I think that if you have ambitions of continuously operating a recovery housing or a sober living, no matter where you are, and you want to be here 3, 5, 10 years down the road, and you want to continuously provide that service, the faster that you can get onto a platform like Sobriety Hub, the faster that you can not only teach yourself to fully use it to its full potential, it's like that is going to provide you with the biggest runway to get to that next level, and you're going to see more success by using it. And then we got to talk about even payment processing. You can invoice directly through the platform, so you're not using a spreadsheet, you're not just using Apple Notes and you're missing people's rent and you forget about who's paying what or whatever it is. You can invoice directly through the platform. It's sending them not only a weekly invoice with the amount that they owe, but they're also getting a receipt for every payment that's logged, it's tracked, and it's all in one place. It's just, I've looked at other softwares, I've done trial runs at other softwares. I'm not going to say their name, but we had guys calling and it's the sales pitch. What we do, blah blah blah, right? And I looked at it, I said, okay, I'll put a house on there and I'll see what's up. And I'll tell you what, I used it for 4 days and I said, this isn't it. Because what Sobriety Hub is doing is it's a powerful tool, but it's simple. It's simple for the house managers to use. When they log in and they have their restricted access, they just see their house. They just see the 10 people in their house. It looks like a social media platform. It's simple. They click on the name, they add a UA, negative or positive. They understand how to use it, and the simplicity is what drives the clean data. Because the easier the platform is to use, the easier, the less errors that are occurring. And the less errors that occur comes back to clean data. And the clean outcomes that you receive from the simple platform being used by people is the money's in the data. The money's in the data. The people that know how they're performing, where they fall short and where they need to improve on, those are the people that have a better understanding of where they need to shift. We need to put more money into this. We need to stop doing this, right? And Sobriety Hub is easy. It's simple. You can teach a house manager how to use it very quickly. I have a Loom video that I have that goes through the basic inputs of Sobriety Hub. I have that available for all our house managers. I can go on and on. I can go on and on, but I truly believe that with the work we're doing, the advancements they're making on forms, they've got plans of like making a cleaner, more easily navigated mobile version. Like everything about it makes sense to me. And because I understand it and I see the vision and I see how it's going to add value to our organization, it's like I'm just fully bought into like having sit downs with Clay, riffing ideas with him, because I know not only is it going to help us get to that next level, it's going to help Plugged In really just keep expanding, but it's going to help them continuously refine the platform. So I truly believe that if you have one house or 10 houses, you should be on this platform. You should be educating yourself how to use it, because it's a very, very powerful tool that's easy to use. And you're not really going to find other people in the space that there's other people that have equally as powerful tools, but the interface, the accessibility, the way it looks, it's not as familiar as what Sobriety Hub is offering. That's all. I mean, I just keep going on and on, but I'll stop there.
Well, thank you so much. That was awesome. I'm excited to try to consolidate all those value adds into a nice cohesive, thing. But
Yeah, I get rambling, man. I get rambling, especially like when I like find things that like I'm passionate about. It's like I'll just go in these wormholes, and it's like that's literally how it would look. Like if someone walked up to me in public and just said, "Hey, tell me about Sobriety Hub," I would just vomit all of that onto them, and they would be like, "Whoa, this guy's crazy." But like, there is a lot of truth in what I'm saying, and I really do hope that this message gets out there, because this platform's going places. It really is.
heck yeah. Well, I'm just so excited to be, growing together. We're at kind of similar stages, actually, super high growth. Um, Before we go, tell us about your podcast, the Odd or God Pod.
Yeah, man. Well, first I got to get you on there. We got to find a time. Again, I truly believe that the more people that know about Sobriety Hub, the better, man. So we'll find a time. We'll get you on. But yeah, man, I do a weekly podcast, the Otter God Pod. It's started out as a garage band, pretty much. Like if you go deep into like my YouTube history, it's kind of cool, because it's like the first episode I was in the living room, and then I'm literally in a garage for like 4 episodes, and then I started renting out conference rooms and offices, right? And then eventually I found a studio that's extremely local to where I'm at, and I'm a full production studio podcast now. But when we first started it, I wanted it to be a platform where everyday people could just share their story in a way that could like reach more people. And it's not a 12-step podcast. It's just simply like, I used to like have a problem with drugs and alcohol, and I'm in recovery from that. And like, this is like a real raw, unfiltered look into like what that was, right? Whether they did a 12-step program or whether they didn't, it didn't matter. I just wanted to hear unfiltered stories of how people like got out of addiction and like into recovery. And so that's what it was for like the first 5 or 6 months. And then recently we've gained a lot of traction. And what we're seeing now is we have people who are just adding extreme value, extreme services to the industry itself. And they want to come on the platform that I've built, and they want to speak to the followers. And, it's crazy because we've got listeners in Philadelphia. I pulled an analytics report last month, and like, I think it was like 32 states we were up to, of like people have clicked in on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and like we're listening to it. And so now I, want to like use that platform for people who are like starting treatment centers, or I got this one lady, and she started a nonprofit where she will house your pets while you're in treatment. So she started almost like not an animal shelter, but like a doggy daycare. So while you go to your 30-day residential program, you can leave your dog there free of charge, and she will watch over your dog for you. And then when you get out, they'll help, get you back reunited with your pet. Like, there are people who are doing phenomenal things in the space. And I just want to use that platform to like let people know about it, right? And just like help them grow their visions. And that's what it's kind of turned into, man. And that's why I think it would be amazing to sit down with you. I'm 1000% sure I could fill a whole 60-minute episode of just me talking about sobriety. So it'll be cool to have you on, man, and we'll just go from there. But that's a little bit about the podcast. Again, it's Odd or God Pod, and that's on all streaming platforms and social media.
The Odd or God Pod. Yeah, look forward to.
Is it odd or is it God?
I say it's God most of the time.
Yeah.
But it's a great name, and I'm stoked to get on there. Stay tuned for Eric's next episode. Hopefully I'll be the participant in the next one or the one after that. We'll see. But well, thank you so much for your time, Eric. It's great to talk. And any final words?
Final words. If you're not convinced, give me a call. Look up PluggedIn Recovery, call the main line. I'll answer it 10 out of 10 times. And you tell me you need more convincing, and I'll have a conversation with you.
Okay, our unpaid business development guy, Eric Parra. All right, man. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Clay.